I think it's an incredible song. I really love it. I think it's an emotional journey.
To see our fans embracing it, wow. People really do appreciate when we write the longer songs.
I think Cosmic's going to add a whole new dimension to the set.
I'm not saying I tried to trick them, but I wanted the idea to work, so I switched the melody notes.
When I really think about it, I'm like, you really think highly of yourself, don't you, you motherfucker?
Attraction. Who is the crowd? Happens to the cage as we perform here up on the stage.
Nobody.
Hello everyone and welcome to TRAX, the official Avenged Sevenfold podcast where we take you through the Avenged Sevenfold back catalogue one song at a time. I am your host Bees and today we are journeying further into the world of Life is But a Dream to give you everything you could wish to know about the unique genre-defying wonder of Cosmic, including how all of you made this song feel like an instant classic. There are some major revelations on this very episode, including the use of 3 drum kits on one song, the beauty and pain of life in the song's lyrical narrative, how the song nearly opened the album, and much more. And if we are to start at the very beginning with Cosmic, we are going to have to go way back. So far back, in fact, that Cosmic's avant-garde lead hook is something that has been kicking around the Avenged Sevenfold vaults for literal decades.
This melody, this song, this chord progression came from Brian like years ago. Like I've heard this song sang in dressing rooms, maybe even back to maybe even the Van days. Like, I mean, this has been a melody and something that he's joked around about that we always thought was catchy, you know, but it never made its way into songs. And I don't even know if we ever really tried an Avenged Sevenfold songs. Matt and Brian might remember that better than me. But at the end of the day, my point is like, I've been hearing this thing for a long time. So to me, the fact that it even eventually, you know, maybe 15 years later makes it on an Avenged Sevenfold record on a great song, by the way, but like it was more comical to me the first few times that I heard it. I was kind of like, oh my God, you finally did it, Brian. You finally squeaked this fucking melody into an Avenged Sevenfold song.
You love so many times, never get it right, then you find me. Which is like this weird thing of like this cocky, weird guy running around telling women that, you know, he was there for them in their time of need. And it was just such like not, it was just funny to me because it's not the type of human being I am. Relationship wise and emotionally, I'm a mess. But for me, because I had that melody that I'd sing in such a weird novelty manner, like I loved it and thought it could do something. We've actually tried to use it in Avenged before, but it never really kind of worked out. I just remember it like making Jimmy laugh, you know, making Johnny laugh, probably annoying Matt and Zach. But it was, you know, just a funny anecdotal sort of novelty type of thing. But I felt like it had potential. There was never a context in which I liked it or enjoyed it.
It's making me question why. I think when you look at the context of the song and because of how the song flows, you take that part by itself without the buildup, and it's a hard thing to kind of figure out what you do with it. It was like one of those aha moments, like, oh, that thing we have that we don't really know where to go with it. I don't know where the footing would really be or how the song would start. Or now we've got this thing. If you stick it here, it's ultra catchy, ultra cool. I love the timing of how it kind of turns around quickly. It's not like a normal sequence. It's not like 4/4. It kind of just it loops in on itself.
Dancing in the wind, his rose is born again. There you'll find me.
It kind of just had this David Bowie thing. I realized now, putting chords to it, and it had a unique time signature, which kind of, I've always been a fan of like John Lennon stuff that just naturally is odd time. Like Happiness is a Warm Gun has some odd time stuff. Across the Universe has some odd time things. And then when we started like arranging it and imagining Matt's voice and good lyrics to it, I was a big proponent of it. And I think Matt liked it right off the bat.
What he was doing, I think, was trying to burn that melody into our head because he had something more there. And, sometimes we write stuff off as like a funny little, snippet of music. But sometimes, like when I was playing the intro riff to Unholy Confessions, every sound check, I was subconsciously trying to get my band members to put it into a song. And I feel like he was doing that.
Loved so many times, never got it right until you found me. That was Brian's mantra. It was so funny. And then, I got to believe it had something to do with him, like, because he believes in, or he thinks soulmates are a real thing. And he's found it in his wife and one of my best friends, Michelle Hayner. And I think 15 years ago or more when he was, having this song keep coming up in his head and kept singing it, it sounds a little egocentric, right? You loved so many times, you never got it right until you found me, your knight in shining armor, right? And I feel like that's where it came from, is his courtship with Michelle. I just think it's so funny when I really think about it. I'm like, you really think highly of yourself, don't you motherfucker?
As we've discussed in the intro and the band are about to tell you while describing this 3-act opus, Cosmic is a weird song structurally and melodically when compared to what usually constitutes a hit, and certainly when you put it next to the fodder that you'll hear on rock radio. But it's all of you that have made this such a hit for the band, and almost instantly, judging by the reaction the week that Life Is But a Dream was released. As the band touch upon in the first upcoming statement, Avenged Sevenfold fans have a long-running history with gravitating towards material that is avant-garde and out there, and as Shadows points out in this next passage, the band are in the privileged position to make an album and then even take to Twitter and admit you'll probably need 3 or 4 listens to this album before it sinks in. This is a weird song on a weird record.
I want to provide something that was provided to me on certain records. And I know we always talk about Pinkerton and we talk about Yeezus a little bit, but when I first heard Pinkerton, I thought it sounded like a bunch of noise and there was nothing in there. It was just like, what? It sounds awful. The vocals are kind of just, you could tell he's just yelling them at the mic and it's just kind of one takers. And then you go away from it for a while. And then one night you're sitting there and you're like, all right, I'm going to throw this on. And then it just completely envelops you and you go, oh my God, how did I not hear these melodies at first? How did I not, like, why was it so distracting to me first time? And I'll also bring up Yeezus because that record has so much creativity, but then I look at those songs and they're all at the bottom of the most played, but it's on the top of like this sort of like influential albums list, right? But then like you look at like On Sight, which I think is brilliant, but it's abrasive and it's like literally one of the bottom songs you'll ever listen. Like it just doesn't get played because it does something different to you then it's not like a banger you just throw on at the club. It's not something you just, right? And so, but those records, somehow they kind of embed themselves into you and they change you as a person. They kind of like give you like this aha moment, this awakening, this difference. And I think it's important to have those records. And I think this does it. So me telling the fan base, you got to listen a couple times, they're not necessarily going to listen to that. They might convince themselves they like it. They might try to like it. They might hate it and want to hate it. But I do feel it's a record that there will be a moment in time where they will put it on and go, what is all the hype about? What is this about? And they will have no expectations. And then it's going to go, oh, I hear all those things that Avenged has always done, but they have different clothes on now. There's a different way it's being presented to me. And in turn, that is going to make them think a little bit differently about music. And it's going to be one of those things that kind of might be in a more important record to them, even though they might not put it on every time they want to hear a banger. That's what this record does for me. And I am super excited to have something like that in our catalog, because I think you can't chase those things. They just have to happen. And they're unique and they're special and they're moments in time. And I do think we have a fan base that maybe needed that from us, because every record can't be the same mindset as the thing that came before it, even if it's musically different or you tried different things or you did double bass this. It's a different layer than just trying to change it up. It is a different way of listening, in my opinion.
I'm a huge fan of Cosmic, but I think collectively we were all surprised by the reaction to Cosmic, because I don't think any one of us were expecting the reaction to be as positive as it was, just because it's, such a different, unique song. But, with the history of this band, it's, certain songs such as Little Piece of Heaven is always a crowd pleaser every night. So I think Cosmic was in that category for this record. But yeah, it definitely threw me by how much people gravitated towards it. I think it's kind of similar to Exist in a sense. We could call it Exist Light, if you will. As far as the arrangement goes and disparities and the parts. And there's a melancholy about it too. And Matt's vocal and what he's singing about, I think, it just kind of brings out certain emotions.
I am surprised that the audience has been this, into it. I can't really place why. I know that, we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but this song was really special to us. It was going to open the record at one point, and I think because of how much we felt it was finished, and then when we got in the studio, it wasn't. And it was like kind of a mad dash to the very end. In our final hour, we pulled something off. So I think I have a little bit of shell shock from actually getting it out. And I also think that there's some really special songs in the catalog that touch on not only these themes, but the way and the mode that it's written in. I would say like Higher and parts of Exist and Fermi Paradox. And I feel like those songs have not captured the audience in a way. Like when you hear those songs and you hear this one, they kind of live in the same family. I also think there's an element of traditional Avenged Sevenfold that lives in there. Whether it's like that sort of Love Lies Bleeding, sort of Elton John, epic journey, like flying through space, sort of synth music. So I think there's a little bit of familiarity or normalcy in a way that this song kind of doesn't throw you off kilter all the time, though it's an adventure, right? The other ones throw you off kilter in a way. This one, it's more of an adventure and you can kind of like have your footing at all times. So maybe that's it, but I can't really explain why. I know I loved it, but I do think a little bit of this sort of difficulty of getting the song where we wanted is kind of clouding my judgment of it.
Dude, I don't know what it is. To be honest, I love it. I mean, I think we lucked up. I mean, there's a lot of things you could point to in our career that we could say, and we could rest our hat on and said, we took the chance, we did this right, it worked out. But anyone who knows, who's attempted those things, know there's also a bit of luck that helps that out. And we got lucky, I'll say, in this sense that we have an amazing fan base that just loves music. You know what I mean? It's for the love of music. They have their opinions. They argue online all the time about which album's the best, which song's the best, which era was the best. I mean, this is beyond my wildest dreams the first time I pick up a bass. You know what I mean? Like, there's this much love for the band that I'm a part of, that they've traveled with us through this history, through this discography, at every point that we've, kind of risked a little bit to put it out there. And when we think we're risking it, we're having fun with it, right? Behind the scenes, if it's on the cusp and we know it, we kind of, it's a weird thing because we kind of, as a group, will push each other and like convince each other that this crazy idea is the right idea. And we're doing it in almost a satirical way. We're serious, but the way that we work, we're kind of laughing at each other while we're doing it. Like, I could visually picture Matt being like, "Oh my God, it'd be brilliant if we do a little piece of heaven." Like, screw it, dude. Like, we're not doing it on a Halloween EP anymore. This is going on the record too. And he's laughing as he's saying it. We're all laughing, but we're all going, yes, this is the right move. You know what I mean? And I feel like that has happened a few times in our career. And because of that, our fan base, our intelligent fan base, our musical loving fan base who wants to be challenged and wants to see what we're coming up with next has now become part of that pushing force of like, okay, you guys got that one pretty quick. What's going to be next? You know what I mean? Like what are we going to do next to throw you off and really challenge your ear? And it's fun for us. It's fun for our fans. I think that it's a mutual agreement at this point that that's what it's going to be. And we're so lucky because that allows us to be as free as we want to be as a band.
It was really eye-opening for me because it showed me that our fans appreciate the depth of the music that we write. And it's not just about, what's going to end up on the radio. Like, they're actually in it for the musicality, the lyrics, the entire experience. And it was kind of a realization for me that like we have such our own thing between us and our fans, and we're not like anyone else. We don't make music for the casual listener, or else we'd be, one of those pop rock bands or something. And to see our fans embracing it, it was really one of those moments like, wow, after all this time, people really do appreciate when we write the longer songs. And you go back and you listen to a song like Save Me or A Little Piece of Heaven, and fans really gravitate to those songs. And then you look at, our newest offering with Life Is But a Dream, and you have a song like Cosmic that people are really radiating towards. That just, that makes us want to work harder than we've ever worked before.
When you're sitting there and everybody's feeling the same way, everybody's got goosebumps, everybody is really feeling this, you just know. But you can know, and then it doesn't resonate, and then you're like, oh, I didn't know. But at least I love it, and you always have that. This was just maybe an ego booster, because like we know, and then the fans the passion for it. The amount of messages that I got that made them cry. It's like my favorite song, and you're my favorite band. My favorite song, my favorite band for ballads might be So Far Away or another song or whatever it might be. But I haven't cried. I haven't sobbed like a baby from it. But this is just like I fucking cry every time I hear it. My dad's never told me that. My dad called me crying and talking about the song and things like that. And so then you're just like, you don't usually know, but we knew and we know now. And it feels good to touch people, and because we're touched by something. And it's a struggle. It's not easy for us. Like, we're not a band full of Paul McCartneys. We had one and he fucking ditched us. Old boy from above here. And so, like, we struggled to get there, but fortunately we're at least talented enough to get to the point, to grind to where we get to a place where we're just so proud. We're touched, not just proud, but like, we're touched by our music. And if it was just me or just Matt, you know, you'd just be like, oh, I love my music. I do, you know, but to have the checks and balances and to have a group of great producers, great songwriters in one band that are all just supporting each other. Yeah, that's such a confidence builder, you know?
Dancing in the wind, his rose is born again. There you'll find me before the dawn of man, in castles made of sand. There you'll find me.
Quick aside here, but I'm sure we all did a double take there when Shads admitted that this song nearly ended up opening the record. Here's a little more on that revelation.
We had a couple things on the cutting room floor that I still really liked that we hadn't finished. The record was going in this more like synthy R&B'd out sort of vibe, like this more Fermi, higher cosmic vibe. And I felt like nobody was like that kind of, because nobody was already written. It felt like it was like that sort of takes you to this peak and then brings you back into that more synthy 80s, but futuristic vibe. But then things like Game Over and We Love You came out. And then we decided to shift into that direction, which was the more abstract. Then all of a sudden, Cosmic was no longer the thing that represented the album because of its length. And then it was going to take you on this into this place that the record didn't necessarily tread much more into that, right? So it wasn't like a good representation of what you want to start the record off. I could see a world where the record goes more in that other direction, and Cosmic's like this great intro to what you're doing. But because of the length and because of things like Game Over, and we wanted to kind of keep people off kilter when we started making these more off kilter songs. So we felt that was a better kind of smack to the face and a wake up call to what we were trying to do and the unpredictability of life and what the record was kind of turning out to be. So we kind of shifted gears on that. So yeah, it was a different intro for a different record in a different time.
A song decades in the making. Cosmic is one of those moments that really show off the reason that it takes Avenged Sevenfold time to construct an album that fits the standards that they and you guys out there hold them to. Forgive me for being more than a little blunt when I say a song like Cosmic can't just be farted out. It's not your standard song structure. It doesn't have a lead riff that's going to be used on an NFL montage. You're not going to hear it getting love from butt rockers in foil t-shirts. And in the hope of not sounding like an asshole here, it's real art, and real art takes time. And in the case of Cosmic and a band with a nearly 25-year legacy at this point, the result of that is a song that's unlike anything else in their canon. It's a ballad, but it's not really a ballad in the traditional sense. Cosmic is truly unique.
It is, but the idea was like, oh, this is going to be easy to pull off. And then when you start like adding those elements and then things take too long or they're not quite like that build up in the middle, I think it goes like 7 times instead of 8. 8 was just too much. And then 6, we tried 6 forever. And then we finally got the let it go. That took so many iterations to feel right. And then the end, oh my God, the end. It was the final hour that this thing got put on this record, and it was not pretty.
It's a true labor of love putting together a song like Cosmic. There's such a fine line between creating a product and creating something very special when it comes to art. There's the finest line and people just don't get it. You know, I specifically remember sitting at Wes Lang's studio and he said, anybody can draw a skull, but not anyone can draw a skull like me. And I'm standing looking around. I collect skulls. I'm like a skull aficionado. And I'm looking around at all the art that he has. And he's got a million skulls on the walls that he's painted. And he was absolutely right. You can't just hire a graphic designer to come up with a skull on a shirt and it'll just look like everything else. Meanwhile, this guy, he puts so much effort into it and he's got this huge studio. And the same thing with what we did with the album. It's like, it's real easy for Brooks to record those drums in one take on an amazing drum set and call it a day, or put some samples on it and, make it sound like huge radio drums that every band's capable of. But it takes time setting up each one of those drum sets, miking every single drum, making sure everything sounds perfect, changing out every single cymbal, because we didn't want it to sound like a big butt rock ballad, but we did want it to have a snare with a certain type of natural reverb, but without making it sound like a Def Leppard album from the 80s, because it would take away from the song. Nothing against Def Leppard, nothing against that shit. There's a time and a place, and that shit's awesome. It's fucking arena rock. But this was more about creating this atmosphere musically. And, getting the guitar tones, you could just plug in and, come up with a cool, clean sound or add some effects to it. But we wanted to come up with a sound that doesn't sound like anything we've ever heard anyone else use or anything that we've ever used. We didn't just want it to be a, digital sounding effect on a clean guitar. So we spent days and weeks going through different processors, different pedals, plugging in different things, going through different guitars. Because you only get one chance once this thing's put out into the world to get it right. Because you can't go back and be like, oh, we should change this, or, it just takes time.
There's something about, a classic rock ballad that we're not really fans of at this point. To, like those have sort of a life they kind of live, the way they kind of roll out and the way they make you feel. We're trying to really stay away from that and make something unique. Doesn't mean that you can't have soft parts or emotional parts or, take you on these sort of journeys. And sometimes it's the instrumentation. Sometimes it's the production or the arrangement, the way the pieces flow together, or the melodies that you're singing over this sort of bed of music, and what the music's trying to get you from point A to point B. Is it a slow ramp? Is it a build up? Or is it a stop and go? Or is it sort of a, traditional? And I think if you can uniquely stay off the path of like the full on traditional thing, you can come up with, if I could explain it, then we would do it all the time. And it's one of those things where you just kind of have to write and feel it and know when it's unique enough and know when to kind of rein it in and bring it back, and when a traditional move is the right move, or when something needs to be shooken up, right? And it's like one of those things that's why you sit there and you write for hours and hours and hours, and you try to take a unique perspective on things and try to. So yeah, it's not a ballad, but it's every check mark you're going to mark off would say, oh, this is a ballad. If you couldn't hear it, you'd say, oh, it's a ballad. But it's all about finding those things that make you feel a little different or put you in a different mindset. And like I said, if I could do it every time, we would.
So this to me is like such a serious context, but has that, I don't know, Broadway-ish dramatic kind of fanfare to it, but it's a very serious song. And I think it's also tempered with the fact that the first part of it, the first, movement it's very hip hop based. You know, Matt and I were kind of going over some different things. He had some ideas. He liked some hip hop-ish sort of references or whatever. But basically, you know, we play it in the studio rubato, which means free time. There's no click and stuff. So hey, da, 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 da. So it's kind of maybe hard for the audience to hear, but if you had a tempo, it's down, da, 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 down, da, 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 da. It's very rhythmic itself. It could be a drum beat in itself, the rhythm of the melody, which I just thought was so fucking fresh. And so we kind of nailed that down to exact notes, exact rhythms that we liked. And it just adds this fresh, modern, serious sort of thing that's kind of bouncy and gives movement to something that's rubato. So I just feel like it just did this really cool juxtaposition.
Pain, it found its way back in until we meet again into that good night. None too far as we chase through the stars beyond forever. I'll follow you.
What I remember is recording it in parts. I mean, you could hear that there's 3 acts. I mean, there's 3 acts to this song, right? And it's kind of parceled out that way, the way we're recording, because, you know, the way we do things is we do drums first, and then we'll get rhythms or rough rhythms of some kind with the right tone for what the song's going to be, and then I come in and start doing the bass stuff for it. So now at this point, if Brian is waiting to do some of the clean guitars on Act 1, I don't want to go in there and start creating a bass that isn't going to complement the guitar, right? So that's where it starts to get compartmentalized. And then by the end of it, to be honest, I'd kind of forgotten the flow of the song because I'd been going in on different parts. And then to listen back the first couple of times, especially when we got before Act 3, the big bass drop, not bass guitar, obviously, but the low end bass drop that just rumbles through everything. If you got a good subwoofer and you listen to, I mean, I've got this old Velodyne 15-inch up in my bonus room. I play that, whole house shakes. It's fucking amazing. When that transition, you could hear that start to go into that final act. That's to me when you realize you've just been on a journey and it's not even over yet. You're like, whoa. And then it just goes into that whole beautiful outlook of our existence and outlook of it actually ends on a positive note. It goes through all these things and then you get this great positivity. And for me, when I hear that Act 3 with that vocal line again going back 15 plus years, reimagined in a beautiful way with that angelic, otherworldly vibe that's happening, universal entity, you know, whatever it may be. I get bursts of star color when I listen to that third act. And when I hear that and knowing where that melody comes from and everything, I'm running through like some memory and emotions at the same time, you know, and it's really beautiful for me.
Time again we try.
The departure at the end is actually a bookended version of, it's the same lyrics and the same melody structure rhythmically as the very intro. But it's done over the chords of the second and third part. Essentially, so the first movement is minor, dun, 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 it's in E minor, and then it transitions. The second movement is in E major, and so we take those. It's a 3 chord change, and we thought it would be really cool to bring back that, to bookend that original melody, but have it in its parallel major, which very simply put is E minor to E major. And you never know how those experiments are going to work. Those are nerd experiments, you know? Like, I guess when the outcome is as good as the idea to us, it's like, oh, fuck. Because that idea, when we had it, was, and it might have even been Matt's idea to see what it would look like to do that. And I'm not saying I tried to trick him, but I wanted the idea to work. So I switched the melody notes a little bit. I kept the rhythm because you can't sing E minor over E major. Somebody better than me probably could make it sound awesome, but it had and said, so I, bring it up a few notes and the melody came right away. And I remember the enthusiasm in the studio when we got that.
We like almost started hugging each other and like, oh God, thank God. Because you don't want to add a new vocal melody at that point. And we knew that the other one was getting old. It was just too much. And then it was like, oh my God, the first melody, it brings it all back together. It like ties it up in this perfect little, knot. So, me and Brian are sitting there all night. He's on the vocoder. We're playing notes. I'm singing. And then he's playing the notes. And then we just started getting wild with it. And we felt like we had it.
This song really just took for fucking ever to arrange. It took forever to lay down, to record and track in the studio, and it took forever to mix. Joe Breezy had to take a stab at it towards the end, and because we were having trouble, and during the limited time when we had a lot of time with Andy Wallace, it still wasn't done by the time he had to move on to a different project or whatever he was doing. So Joe came in, and Joe was trepid about it. He doesn't want to. What Joe would say is shitting all over Andy's great work, which is so silly because Joe is just as talented as they fucking get. And he didn't shit on Andy's work. He absolutely elevated Andy's work. And that's a fucking tough chore to say the very least. But it was elevated post Andy Wallace by the great Evil Joe. And that's when it clicked.
We had gotten back from mixing with Andy, and we had done all these different drum techniques, especially on the snare, on the, like, let's call it section 3 of the song. We have this drum tone that's like this crazy drum mic we are using that ended up making the mix sound really small, but it sounded great in Andy's studio and it sounded really crunched down. We end up getting back, going to mastering, and I go, Brian, I'm going to take another crack at the end of the song. And luckily the song ends and then starts again. So we could take just that portion with the stems and remix it all and not ruin the whole mix. So Joe's really great at being able to kind of add reverbs and get that doodle before it pops into the end. But me and Joe go back in and we try to remix this thing. So we get back to the natural snare. We get back to a bunch of things we loved about it. Because again, the song, it sounded really good in a vacuum, but section 3 just sucked up into this like mono sort of crazy tone that didn't fill out the speakers, but it's because of the mics we were using and because of the compression we were trying on the snare and all these problems. And so it sounded good in some speakers, but awful in others. And so we went back and we spent like 3 days remixing the end. And I sent it to Brian and he's just like, oh, all right, we've got it. And then we got in there and we had an idea and we had a vision and we ended up finishing the song with Joe.
We are always careful in not wanting to promote drug use in any way on this show, but some of those experiences have led the band to embrace new concepts and perspectives. The lyrics to Cosmic are particularly beautiful as they see the joy and pain in our journey as humans. We're all here in this moment together, and that's easy to forget. And while that particular party has to end at some point, it's not a revelation that we're all going to die, is it? It's a beautiful thing that we are here creating human history together, right here, right now, together with the one life that we have. That is essentially the story of Cosmic.
This whole thing came out from a night out with the wife where took a couple stems of mushrooms and we were having some fun. So we took some more. We went to a bar. We were hanging out. One of the funnest times I've ever had in my life with my friends is just pure love and laughing and a bunch of those funny things you notice where like I literally felt like I could hear every conversation. And we were at Johnny's bar and I remember like being able to hear every group of people talking in there. Like every piece of sound was like sculpted out of like, it was just weird, right? And we were having a great time. And then we went back home and we were both convinced we, had lived past lives and that we just kept connecting with each other. And we had a beautiful night. And I don't come out of that and put a bunch of weight behind it, but I do put a lot of weight around the experience, right? Around the idea of where it took me and how much love we felt and how much connection we felt with everything, and just had a beautiful night. And that is where where we thought of there you'll find me, and like it was like here and there and there and everywhere. And when time kind of stands still, it's irregardless of the moment, it just kind of, those moments are timeless and you're there. And that played a huge role in sort of like breaking through that sort of idea.
Rings of dust and ice, weightless in the night. There you'll find me. Let it go.
I think in the heavy metal community, maybe I'm an outlier, but I actually find tons of emotion in vocoder vocals, again, in the robot voice.
Dancing in the wind, the rose is born again. There you'll find me before the dawn of man. The castle's made of sand. There you'll find me.
I can listen to Stevie Wonder doing it, or I can listen to Dr. Dre hip hop stuff where they've got, California, or like Daft Punk. To me, there's so much emotion in that stuff. It's about the melody. And so for me, it was like this toggle between our multiple iterations of cosmic stuff, right? The iterations of me and you and time, and there's the human element, and then there's the space element, the robot element, the particles element, all these elements. And so they have different voices. And the idea was sort of like fading in and out and realizing you've met up again with this one that you love, and you realize you're there with them again. And also realizing that it's not going to last long and you don't know when you're going to see him again, but you will. And so there's like this toggle between this painful love. To love is to feel pain because you have something to lose. And so when you have the vocoder at the end, it feels like it's trying to break through, and the voice is breaking through and it's breaking up. It's like this sort of trying to make this effect of like the distance opening, right? And the distance closing, and then it's opening again, and you're losing that one, and they're breaking up into the into the madness, and they're trying to break through whatever reality they have, at this moment when you're trying to live in it. And so just playing off those themes, and, the guy starts off very, it's very bare bones, and then it grows, and then it drops, and then it comes back, and then there's the robot voice, and then the guy's breaking through, and you hear we're using like a chaos pad to kind of
So it's like him peeking from Earth or whatever. Like he's just trying to get to that dimension. He's poking through, like fucking going crazy. And there's a sense that ties it back to what happened. And I'm fucking proud of it. It all makes sense, and it's all, but all the parts are like the story, the philosophy, everything was executed. It didn't just like start off with one song and then you end up with a whole different song, which oftentimes happens, and that's okay. It's a great song. It's a great song. But this, all the imaginations, all the impetus, the impeti, all of it came to fruition on this song, which is rare, which I don't know of another song that has done that in our history. And it all ties in, all these things just that you want to work. And you're like, I hope this works. And calling through through a different dimension or whatever it is. It all fucking worked. And I'm just so thankful and grateful that it does, because you can wish that a song does that with all your heart. You can work with all your hours and might. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna work out for you, It's a time-old battle of star-crossed lovers. In this case, like interdimensional lovers, soulmates, trying to find each other. And then find each other in different lives, and then always being torn apart somehow. I'm getting fucking crazy goosebumps even thinking. It's beautiful, because you say we're crossing seas and deserts, but no, we're traversing dimensions. We're traversing space and time, and just next level quantum physical concepts that create these large barriers for these soulmates to exist, yet they continue to exist in perpetuity, really. So it's a very beautiful concept. And when you paint that picture with those words, what does it fucking sound like to us? And so to take like the same life, or this period of their love, this chapter of their love in, the caves of Altamira and or the tombs in Egypt and all this different shit, and then you make it intergalactic, fucking shit. Then all of a sudden, the drums are fucking crazy. Your sources of inspiration are different. You're looking to vocoders and robot voices and all this different type of shit. But yeah, it's challenging because it can't be novelty. To me, it's a beautiful song, and you want to keep it beautiful. But when we did apply those instruments and iterate through those types of philosophies and stuff, we were smitten kind of right away. But we love that shit.
Before Life is But a Dream was conceived and released, screaming into your ears whenever you so desire, Brooks had mentioned to us on this very show that a song on the album uses not one drum kit, not two drum kits, but a staggering 3 different kits in the studio on just one song. And so it comes to be, dear listener, that Cosmic is the song in question. And so here is Brooks' 3 kits whack-a-man on why and how such an unusual but devastatingly effective technique was used on Cosmic, and the band, with how the incredibly non-traditional orchestration, complete with its almost Burt Bacharach-style French horns, came to fruition.
This is the song with the 3 famous drum kits. First time tackling 3 kits. I wish I could say that I bounced around 3 kits just on one take, but that was physically not possible unless I was a gymnast, but I'm not. It starts from, a whisper to more of a raucous at the end. So I think that what's in between that dynamic range called for some different approaches. And with the kit, that was, I think it was imperative to at least experiment with some different ideas. Going between the acoustic kit and then I had a metal kit, which means like in material, in the sense of materials, it was like metal toms, metal kick drums, metal snares. So it just gave it a whole different dynamic range and tone. So like in the metal section, it just called for a lot of breath. And with that kind of, Zeppelin-esque sounding kit, it just seemed like the right decision. I am swapping instruments on the kit now. So, and then, when we play Cosmic Live, I'm also going to have an auxiliary snare drum to replicate that Zeppelin part. So, if guitar players can do it, why not drummers? So it makes my tech a little busier, but luckily he's on board with the experimentation. I'll say by using the 3 different drum sets dictates how I play. When I'm playing on the second drum set, which is all metal shells, I play differently. I think differently. My fills are different by how the drums resonate. The space and the parts, in the ballad section, and then on the third section of the song, which I call, I guess, kind of the funk trap kit, everything is very tight sounding. So, I play with more nuance. And I think even like the groove that I was playing during the demo days was completely different because of how the drums were sounding. So, by the tuning of the drums, the shells, it just makes my approach much different than playing on my traditional kit. So, yeah, I think the juxtaposition between all the 3 drum sets creates different feels. I have fond memories of tracking that song for those reasons of feeling the song differently depending on what kit I was playing.
I don't even want to get into this battle again, but you could record this whole thing with 1 drum set and then just sample everything to where everything sounds like 3 drum kits, right? But we decided to spend 4 or 5 days on it and set up new kits and get tones for all 3 parts and just, roll with it natural. And that's something that we really appreciate about music, is finding those tones and searching and doing that. And yeah, it's like, it's got a lot of flavors and you got to make them all work, and you want them to feel abrasive, but not too abrasive. Right. And you want to push limits, but you don't want to go over your own limit where you feel it just goes into tacky. And that's, again, it's just all taste. It's where do you draw the line and where do you want to take the fans?
The orchestration is such an important part of the song, but as far as, when it comes in and swells and comes out, and that's all listening to the song over and over and mixing and just trying to feel as a listener what creates the most impact. All the musical performances by everyone involved were just top notch, which really makes things better and adds a lot of time and expense to making an album, but it can't be replicated. You know, everything can't just be keyboards and synthesizers for a band like us. There's such an art to finding the tones, and that takes a long time that people don't fully realize. And fortunately, as a band, we typically really all come together and all hear similar things like, you know, I don't know, the snare's a little too tuned too low or a little too high or needs more snap, or and the same with, you know, orchestration. When you hear it in a mix, you want to show it off, but the truth is sometimes you have to back off and pull back a little bit to let other things breathe. And music's just all it is it's a tug and pull of sound, and you have to be willing to give up a little bit of, you know, one amount of space to another amount of space, and just going back and forth, you know, turn this up a little bit, turn this down a little bit, bring this in, bring this out. And you know when it's right.
I like that we had this French horn lead that kind of brings in new melodies, you know, so now we have some interesting movement, some back and forth call and answer type stuff. Although they kind of crosstalk and it's not the most professional thing. It's actually kind of old school, and maybe another parallel, old school Avenged, where we don't care who's speaking. Zach's guitar, Matt's mouth, the drums, Matt's mouths with harmonies. Fucking solo's going to go. There's something, you know, we're going to jam pack the part with it. So there's some crosstalk. Its intention is to be a call and answer type of thing, but it's, you know, it gets busy. But basically, you know, it's kind of got this Brahms-ish, big, padded, syrupy sort of thing. And it builds throughout, and it does what it's supposed to do, but it also stays out of the way, which is great. And maybe people don't hear it much, you know, even in certainly not the third movement. And then everything cuts out, and there it is. So to me, it's highly effective, but I love that we didn't just have to, okay, here's a chance at orchestration. Let's orchestrate the fuck out of this thing. You know, we let it feel pretty natural, you know?
I try to think of music now, not as, I always thought of music as these songs, and they're like, this is how you do it, and this is what it is. And then now I think of music as, it's just sounds of our life, right? It could be the guy with the sledgehammer next door, or the bird singing, or this. It's like the spectrum grows so wide, and you're just trying to make sounds and like vibes, and you're trying to get them on to this, like, you know, whatever device you want to use to get them into your ear holes. And you go like, oh my God, this makes me feel something at a primal level. And once you open up that sort of leeway, instead of going, well, it has to be a distorted guitar, and it has to be this bass tone, it has to be drums. Now those things work. There's a reason they work. They're pleasant to listen to, but there's also a lot of other things you can throw in there. And that's why we have so many different cultures with different types of music and different instruments, and whether it's chanting or whether it's, you know, banging on, you know, different elements in the, you know, in the wild or whatever it is. It's an interesting thing when you open up that sort of floodgate of where music is just sounds. How do you change it around for humans to listen to it? And I also think that on this record in particular, it doesn't need to be everyone's favorite record. It just needs to exist. And I think that alone gets people gets the juices flowing a little bit, going like, maybe I don't like that. I saw an article where it said appreciating the record, right? Like where they weren't even a fan of it. They just said, I appreciate that this is out. And I think that that's actually really satisfying to me, that people feel that way. Like that they're like, listen, I don't get it, but I'm glad that someone's doing something. One thing that scares the shit out of me is going down this, like, turning Avenged Sevenfold into a quote unquote career. I'm okay with being a legacy band as long as we keep pushing the limits of like our audience and like people tuning in going, like, I know what 99% of bands are doing that are legacy bands to me, and it never really veers. And that's okay. But I don't want this to be a career like that. I don't want our career to follow that trajectory. I like putting on Kid A and going, and just being enveloped by it. And I've been doing that a lot lately. I've been listening to that record and going, wow, what the fuck? Like, I love that. And so I want to continue to do that because that just is more exciting to me. And I always want to be on my toes and feel like we can lose it at any moment because we took some chances. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about how divisive the record was, and I was trying to figure out how I would feel if everyone loved it right off the bat. And I actually came to the conclusion that if everyone loved it off the bat, then I would feel really disappointed that we didn't take people far enough, because that would mean that people were already there, right? They were already at this point where they were waiting for something like this. And I feel like Cosmic is a centerpiece, but I do feel like this record is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, because it was that question that I asked Brian, did we go far enough? And he said, yes. If it would have been completely embraced, I would feel like we totally missed the mark. We missed an opportunity. But Cosmic is one of those ones where I think it does help people kind of get in the fold. They kind of can feel out the record. They can have a centerpiece where they can build off of, where they go, okay, I kind of get what's going on here. This is unique. It's different, but I can go through these other songs and understand what's happening as well.
By the time you hear this episode, the psychedelic stop-motion video for Cosmic will be out there for you to see, and the song will also have made its live debut. And the whole Life is But a Dream show is off the scale. It is one of the best shows that Avenged Sevenfold have ever put together. But the lasers during the final parts of Cosmic are fully mind-blowing. You'll know if you've seen this leg of the tour. But during the making of this episode, Brooks gave us a little insight into how preparations for the song's live birth were going. Here's that.
I can't speak for the other guys in the band, but I didn't think Cosmic was going to be one on the set list just because of the soundscapes and because of, well, I'm playing 3 different drum sets, but we've already had a discussion with Bob, our sound guy, and he's going to make the two out of 3 kits work, sound wise, where he's going to tweak it live, but then on the middle section, that's where I have to do the auxiliary snare. But I think taking this song on, we kind of like the Pepsi challenge of doing it. And, I think songs that fans aren't expecting are, it's exciting to be able to pull it off. Yeah, I think Cosmic's going to add a whole new dimension to the set too. And also graphically too. I think with the video walls, we're going to do something really special with that. And everyone's excited about this particular song because it's so different than anything in our catalog. And hopefully everyone will be shaking their asses by the 3rd segment.
This is cool for us because it's fun to get those 3 different tones in a song and have them change that way. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do that 5, 6, 7 years ago as guitar players and bass players. It would have been, you could have done it, but it would have been very difficult, and you had multiple amps and everything. Now with technology as great as it sounds and as great as it's working, I'm excited to dive in. I've got the stems from everything. I get to listen to everything that I tracked again. I haven't heard it, on its own since I tracked it fucking 3-4 years ago, whatever it was now. And it's always fun to go back and then look at the notes, see what we used, match it up, get it really close. And then what I like to do is improve upon it if I can. Like what sounded great on the album, and then once it's mixed, everything like that's great for stereo sound. How can I make it even better for a live performance? So I'll usually take what I did on the record and jazz it up a little bit.
extra things before we get into a music theory with Sin that is all about what is, in my anything but humble opinion, one of the best solos of his entire career, which when you consider Gates's work over the years really is saying something. Here's Zaki talking about that very solo and Sin himself admitting that the band had to overcome some serious insecurities to get Cosmic into its final form.
The ultimate truth is that he is so fucking good at guitar. And that's coming from, you know, being a decent player myself, respected. Because I'm behind the scenes and in the studio and sitting over his shoulder while he's doing the stuff and helping out as best as I can, and just such a fan of him as a guitar player, it's easy to see how these solos come to life. He doesn't fuck around with like normal scales and modes and all that shit. I mean, I can barely even tune a guitar, so you're probably talking to the wrong guy when it comes to any technical, but I don't care about any of that stuff. I only care about the finished product, how it makes you feel, what it sounds like. And he's doing truly, truly technical, very, very difficult stuff, even on parts that sound simple. Because, you know, when we do duels and stuff, and there's times where I'm just like, okay, I have no idea what you're doing. He's like, oh, you know, well, you hit this note, then you move your eighth finger 12 inches over. It's like, well, I don't have fucking 8 fingers. And he's like, how many, like just stuff that's like almost impossible. I figured out there's stuff that's just like, he's like, yeah, just wrap your thumb around the top of this thing. And then, you know, put your finger over here. And I'm just like, you know, that's not physically possible for most human beings. Right. And he's able to play at, you know, incredible speeds, just stuff that's really, really difficult. It's one thing to just do sweeps and stuff and sound impressive. And, you know, and a lot of guitarists do that. It's kind of like parlor tricks, but he's very adamant about not relying on those things and incorporating, you know, different scales and different notes that make it a lot more difficult. So when you hear a solo, you know, especially in Cosmic or in Nobody, those deserve every ounce of credit he gets as a guitar player, in my humble opinion, because they're really special. And he's a really unique and talented musician.
I guess for me, my own personal insecurities was that I've heard this melody since, you know, I how many fucking years, like 25 years, almost literally 25 years. And it being from kind of this novelty concept that I just didn't know. I don't, you know, you never want to just, because it's there, say, hey guys, I'm really fighting for this part. And even when they're accepting of the part, it still doesn't mean that you're not like waiting for somebody to, you know, months in to go, you know, I tried to give it a shot, but it's, you just, there's just things like that. Not all songs have it. And this one just did for me. And then just the struggle with like, there was insecurities. Like, did we put too much shit in at the end? You know, the middle part made sense. The beginning part made sense, but in mixing, it was like, we can't get it there, guys. Like, what the fuck? We tried 5 different things, which takes, you know, 5 different things could be 15 hours a piece. Every single one could take 15 hours to do. We had the longest, craziest days in the studio, in the mixing studio with Andy. And so when it doesn't come naturally, and it doesn't even come when you're grinding, it's tough, but you whittle away at it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, this guitar, what if we just, instead of like bringing up levels and working on the drums so much and all that stuff, what if we just shave the high end of the guitar? It's going to take some of that buzzy space vibe away from it, but let's do it. And then all of a sudden it's just so cleared up, like things like that. I think that's what we did with Joe. We shaved some high end. And then Joe's like, okay, I can compress the drums. I can distort them even further, which is going to bring some more high end. There's just like so much more room. And before we were so focused on drums, and so focused on the strings in there. Like we started taking out the strings a little bit. It's like, well, where's that tie in? Like now it's just like like the organic, there's just like subconscious elements in there, strings that make it organic. So you're not just full futuristic space age toys. And that's emotive. And that's part of like the heart and soul. It's intuitive. It's not like these things just are a feeling, right? So there's just a myriad of puzzles that we were attacking.
I remember Brian was like, we have something special here. I remember he said something like that. I think it's an incredible song. I really love it. I think it's an emotional journey. I think it's done tastefully. I think it adds elements, futuristic elements with tried and true sort of elements of the past, classic rock elements. It does feel special to me. I mean, I could put this on and show it to anyone and be super proud of it. I think it could touch just about anyone that listens to it and go, okay, I get what you're doing. I haven't really heard much like that. It's unique. It's different, you know?
Let's open this with a wider question that is, what is the role of the guitar solo in such a futuristic sounding record? Because it's not a traditional album and the guitar solo is something that's considered quite classic. Like, what is the role of the guitar solo wider in the record, but also within Cosmic?
It's for people to go take a restroom break and for a select few people, to take a break from the vocal and listen to the same song in a different context. And for me personally, it's there to build into something. It's very important to play chess with guitar solos. It's very important to use melodies, use concepts from the song that will make your fingers fucking really upset with you for weeks at a time, because, as many techniques as I know, and I'm spent a lot of time behind that instrument, usually what I hear in my head isn't what my fingers have kind of developed muscle memory wise. And so, I'm very proud of that, because I compose a solo as if I'm composing a song. I do not sit there and play some different ideas. My improv chops suck because I'm not comfortable with playing things that I'm able to play already. At times they can suit stuff, but the melody is extremely important for me. The vibe is extremely important for me. The actual chops, that that's not a chop thing. That is a waterfall cascade. That's and a way to get back down, fall from grace, if you will, to be super dramatic about that. That's maybe not what I was thinking in the studio, but that's how I'm thinking. And it's obviously, it's maybe not obvious, but it's auto-tuned. The first solo is auto-tuned. So it gets this elasticity, which is unfamiliar for auto-tune because it plays with the guitar differently than the vocal. So it's just like rapid and kind of sporadic, as if something's about to happen or break or unleash. And so that cascade with auto-tune has a really accentuated sort of vibe for that particular technique. It has this weird sort of thing and then breaks off into the second solo. The gross reverb injections are very unique to anything that I've ever done. So it really makes maybe a more traditional solo. It really gives it a different life. I couldn't figure out something unique to do. Everything was a little too unique, too novelty, or too traditional. So we attached reverb to an expression pedal, but it didn't do the exact thing. So we ran a parallel spring reverb tank and just recorded the whole solo on reverb. We made clever use of the fact that in the studio you take different takes. So if I go like that, reverb is going off, that trail. And then I'll record a second track for the next excerpt. So those trails are on the 5, 6, 7, 10 different takes that I had. So we can interject these trails, and that new passage that I begin to play doesn't affect that reverb.
On the more human level, where this was recorded towards the back end of the record, do you think there's a lot to be said for writing a guitar part that's taken as many people in the way that it has, like the lead guitars on Cosmic, coming at the point in time when you're more confident in those experiments?
There's like one part of confidence. I don't really think of it this way, but at 42 years old, 40 at the time, whatever it was, 40, 41, I knew I'd get there. You just know you're going to get there. You don't know how, and that could be very frustrating, but it's one of my best solos. That was the best solo for me. And my band felt the same way. And when they do their part, they spare no expense as well. And then again, we're older now, and we know that we've been through thousands of challenges, the toughest challenges. Losing a friend is the toughest challenge. We've overcome so much fucking adversity that being in the studio, being very fortunate to have the success to facilitate monumental amounts of time in great studios with great producers and stuff, we know that we're going to get there. It's just about taking the time, pursuing when you're losing sleep and you feel like giving up over and over and over again, to keep going. And the thing is, I wouldn't put out a record. I'm closer to not putting out another record. Don't mean to scare everybody, but I'm closer to not ever putting out another record, far closer than to putting out anything that feels phoned in, even at a minuscule percentage. I feel like the rest of the band members are on the absolute same page. So the problem becomes, when do we get old enough to where we can't grind through it and get to the point where we give each other goosebumps? As funny as that sounds. So that's it. But right now we're shitting in fucking tall cotton, and we do have good taste, and we do have the ability to push through, and everybody's getting along famously, and it feels great. So I'm not taking it for granted. I'm just enjoying it right now.
And how important is Brooks to this solo specifically? Because the way that you dictate pace between the two of you upping the tempo, adding drama, little things like the parts where he switches to 32s on the hi-hat.
Yeah.
Like, how important is Brooks to this specifically?
Very important. And he collaborates very well. And the band's great about dynamic and stuff. So that was a very concerted effort to get him to boil down and just to piece it back, because you just don't want to go choo, choo, choo for fucking ever. So he's did, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking differently because he's playing the drums differently. He's an extremely dynamic player, and he loves to collaborate. He's just an absolute joy to just be around. I mean, he's kind of the quieter guy, but I think at this point, people know that he's just has a brilliant sense of humor. Just brilliant. He's not the guy that's taking over the studio with fucking jokes. His responses to shit are just fucking so unique, so sharp and acerbic and cutting. And his drums are the same way. Like, it's almost like everything Brooks does is almost like a ba-doom psh, but he's reinventing ba-doom psh, like throughout everything, because it's just fucking comical to me. But it also emotionally shares like this sense of like to inject soul. I mean, it just, all these things like inject soul. He doesn't take himself too serious, and these things will make you laugh, but you're just like, like, that's an old 70s thing. I'm laughing, but Jesus fucking Christ, that's the coolest fill to do that in the middle of a metal song. It's badass. That's a badass fill. I grew up listening to bands doing those fucking fills. Like, it's funny to hear it all of a sudden. I hadn't heard it in 20 years, but my God, now I'm past the laughing stage. Now I'm just like, what a brilliant human. It engenders different playing from all of us, unique playing, developing dynamics from the bass to guitars to vocals. So again, to use the cliche, but to support a different type of way of saying it, he's absolutely the backbone of this band.
And that is it for another episode of TRAX, the official Avenged Sevenfold podcast, taking you through the band's back catalogue one song at a time. I have been your host, Bees, and if you have enjoyed what we have put together on this show, please do go and check out all of the older episodes. We have done so many of the band's back catalogue thus far, and we will see you next time for another episode of TRAX. We've got a question from the Death Bats Club that I think I'd like to ask at this point. That is from Life is But a Dream. I asks, and butter as in the substance that goes on your toast, asks, is there a connection between the synth break in Cosmic and the synth at the beginning of Ordinary? They have similar melodies and are both followed by a vocoded singing.
Yes, I don't know if it's so symbolic of anything too cute, too clever, but to have identities throughout the whole thing. I mean, there's so much color on the record. I think it was kind of very important to us. Definitely was to me to have some of these new, which is a guitar arpeggio, by the way, to have those, recurring a little bit. There's harmonized guitars, like the solo for Easier is similar to the tone for solo for Cosmic. It's a really buzzy sort of thing, which is, it's harder to tell in Cosmic, but it's the same tone is used for three different things. The end of Mattel, the last chorus down, down, down is the same as Cosmic, the final movement of Cosmic, and then the solo on Easier. So yeah, it's to have those kind of things there, but used in a different sense to where it's not so obvious. But yeah, absolutely intentional. And great job on her part for noticing that it was followed by auto-tune or vocoder or whatever. I didn't even notice that. It wasn't intentional.